In 1970, Dodge finally built one of the most beautiful and brutal muscle cars ever made. You could order it with the legendary 426 Hemi engine. It became a movie star, a symbol of pure rebellion. And then, just 4 short years later, Dodge took this icon out back and quietly killed it. But here's the part that still stings. The truly humiliating chapter came a few years after that, when Dodge dug up the proud Challenger name, dusted it off, and slapped it onto a tiny, gutless, 4-cylinder economy car imported from Japan. The mighty Hemi Challenger, one of the meanest machines Detroit ever built, was reduced to a rebadged Mitsubishi. This is the story of how the Dodge Challenger was born too late, died too young, and then suffered the single most embarrassing fate of any muscle car legend. And to understand the tragedy, you have to start with its terrible timing. The Dodge Challenger has a problem baked into its very birth. It showed up to the party years after everyone else had already started dancing. Think about the timeline. Ford lit the fuse on the entire pony car craze with the Mustang back in 1964. Chevrolet answered with the Camaro in 1967. Even Dodge's own corporate cousin, Plymouth, had the Barracuda out early. But Dodge itself did not launch the Challenger until the 1970 model year. That is a full 6 years after the Mustang kicked everything off. Now, the Challenger was gorgeous, with a long hood, a short rear deck, and an aggressive wide stance. Dodge had clearly decided that if they were going to be late, they would at least make the grandest entrance possible. And in a way, they did. But there was a brutal truth hiding behind that beautiful sheet metal. By 1970, the muscle car party was not just winding down. The storm clouds were already gathering on the horizon. The Challenger had arrived at what looked like the peak of the mountain. Without realizing, it was actually standing on the edge of a cliff. But before the fall, there was one glorious, roaring moment in the sun. When Dodge finally launched the Challenger, they did not hold back. Their goal was simple: build the most potent pony car the world had ever seen. And to do it, they made almost every engine in Chrysler's arsenal available. You could get a sensible 6-cylinder if you just wanted the looks. Or you could climb the ladder all the way up to the absolute monsters, the 440 cubic inch big blocks, and at the very top, the legendary 426 Hemi. The performance flagship was the R/T, short for road and track, and a Hemi Power Challenger R/T was a genuinely terrifying machine for its day. Dodge even offered the famous shaker hood, an air scoop bolted directly to the engine that poked up through a hole in the hood and visibly shook and trembled as the engine revved. They wrapped all of this in wild, unforgettable paint colors with names like Plum, Crazy Purple, Sublime Green, and Go Mango Orange. There was even a special homologation model, the Challenger T/A, built so Dodge could go racing in the Trans Am series. With its matte black fiberglass hood and a hopped-up small block, it became one of the very first American production cars to leave the factory wearing different size tires front and rear, a trick that is now common on modern supercars. Only around 2,400 of these T/A models were ever made in a single year. For one brief, beautiful moment, the Challenger was everything a muscle car should be, and the world fell in love. That first year, 1970, was the Challenger's golden moment, and it shined brightly. Dodge sold around 77,000 of them in that debut year, a strong and promising start. The car instantly developed a personality far bigger than its sales numbers. It became a cultural icon almost overnight, most famously starring in the 1971 cult film Vanishing Point, where a fearless driver pushed a white Challenger R/T to its absolute limits across the American desert. That single movie cemented the Challenger forever as a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and raw, untamed speed. To this day, that image is a huge part of why the car is so beloved. On paper, in that moment, the future looked incredibly bright for Dodge's new pony car. It was fast, it was gorgeous, it was famous, and it could be ordered with one of the greatest engines ever built. Everything was perfect, and that is exactly why what happened next is so heartbreaking. Because almost the instant the Challenger reached that peak, the entire muscle car world began to collapse beneath it, and the Challenger had the worst possible timing to be caught in the avalanche. The forces that killed the Challenger did not attack all at once. They closed in slowly, squeezing the life out of it year by year. The first blow landed in 1971. New rules forced engineers to lower the compression in most performance engines so they could run on the coming low-lead fuels, and lower compression meant less power. That same year, 1971, quietly became the very last year you could get the legendary 426 Hemi in Challenger. The crown jewel was gone. Then 1972 arrived and brought the real carnage. Tightening emissions regulations and skyrocketing insurance costs effectively wiped out the big block performance engines. The mighty motors that made the Challenger a legend simply vanished from the order sheet. The car that could once be a fire-breathing Hemi monster was now stuck with tamer, choke-down engines. On top of that, the government mandated big, heavy, ugly 5-mile-per-hour crash bumpers for 1973 and 1974, which added weight and wrecked the car's clean, aggressive looks. In just 2 short years, the Challenger had gone from a snarling predator to a defanged shadow of itself. The party was over, and Dodge knew it. By 1974, the writing was on the wall in giant letters. The muscle car market had not just softened, it had cratered. The 1973 oil crisis had sent fuel prices soaring and gas lines stretching around the block, and suddenly a thirsty V8 pony car was the last thing most buyers wanted. Sales of the once promising Challenger had fallen off a cliff after that strong first year, dropping by more than half and then sliding further as the performance drained away. With the big engines gone, the looks ruined by bumpers, and buyers fleeing to economy cars, the Challenger no longer made any business sense. So Dodge pulled the trigger. Partway through the 1974 model year, in the spring, production of the Challenger simply stopped. There was no grand farewell, no special final edition to celebrate its short, brilliant life. It just ended. After only 5 model years, the original Dodge Challenger was dead and buried. In total, around 165,000 of these first-generation cars have been built before the lights went out. For muscle car fans, it was a sad but familiar story. Another legend cut down in its prime by emissions, insurance, and a changing world. But the Challenger's story was about to take a turn so strange and so humiliating that it stands almost alone in muscle car history. Here is where the story goes from sad to genuinely insulting. A few years after killing the Challenger, Dodge decided the name was too good to leave sitting in a drawer. So beginning in 1978, they brought it back. But what they brought back was an absolute betrayal of everything the Challenger had ever stood for. The new Challenger was not a muscle car. It was not even an American car. It was a rebadged Mitsubishi, a small, economical Japanese coupe that Dodge simply imported and stuck its badge on. Gone were the thundering big blocks and the Hemi. In their place sat tiny 4-cylinder engines, making a fraction of the power. To add insult to injury, Mitsubishi even marketed one of those little 4-cylinder engines as a Hemi, dragging the most sacred name in Mopar performance down to a buzzy economy motor. Imagine being a muscle car fan in 1978, hearing that the Challenger was back, rushing to the dealer, and finding this. A gutless, badge-engineered import wearing the name that once carried the 426 Hemi. For purists, it represented everything that had gone wrong with the American car industry. This sad imposter limped along until 1983, and then the Challenger name was put to sleep once again. The cruelest irony of all, while Ford never stopped building the Mustang, and Chevrolet eventually revived the Camaro, Dodge had taken its proud muscle legend and let it become a forgettable badge on someone else's economy car. It was a low point that few muscle car names ever sank to. After that embarrassing chapter ended in 1983, the Challenger name vanished completely, falling into a deep sleep that would last around 25 years. But something interesting happened during that long silence. The original 1970 to 1974 cars, the real Challengers, did not fade away. Instead, their legend grew and grew. As the years passed, those first-generation cars, especially the rare Hemi and T/M models, became some of the most worshipped and valuable muscle cars on the planet, with the best examples now trading for staggering, often 6-figure and even 7-figure sums at auction. The car that Dodge had killed and then humiliated had quietly become automotive royalty. Finally, in 2008, Dodge did the right thing. They brought the Challenger back for real, as a proper retro-style modern muscle car, with a genuine Hemi V8 under the hood, directly inspired by that beloved 1970 original. The legend was reborn, and this time it was treated with the respect it always deserved, eventually spawning tire-shredding modern monsters like the Hellcat. The original may have died too young and suffered a cruel insult in between, but in the end, the Challenger proved that you simply cannot keep a true legend down forever. So that is the wild, tragic story of the Dodge Challenger. A car born too late, that blazed bright for one glorious year, got slowly strangled by a changing world, and was killed after just 5 seasons, only to have its proud name dragged through the mud on a rebadged economy import. And yet, it survived all of it to become one of the most beloved muscle cars ever made. If you love these stories of legendary machines that were built up, knocked down, and left for dead, hit subscribe, because here in the garage we are always digging up the muscle cars that died too soon. Thanks for watching.